Good.
All right, audio's going.
Hi, how are you
Hi,
doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
What is your name?
Gwenn Swift.
Nice to meet you, Gwen.
Nice to meet you too.
Where do you live right now?
I live in West Oakland, so it's a little bit above downtown, just sort of a little bit up and to the left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy living there?
I do. I like it a lot. It's pretty quiet. There's not too much going on around, which is very familiar to me. So I'm not into the whole like busy scene, step out of the house and there's a lot going on. So it's nice. I like it there.
Where are you from? Why is it more familiar for you?
I'm from Western Massachusetts. So like I wouldn't say it was a small town. It's kind of like a small city, like right. I don't know if you know where Springfield is. Most people don't. It's like Boston, and then the other side of the state. There's like this whole area that most people, sort of west of like Chicago, don't really know about Western Massachusetts unless you went to school there. But it's pretty middle of nowhere, a lot of people would say. So I sort of grew up in a pretty quiet place. So it's more like familiar of the
So you
neighborhood.
like that? You weren't like hungry for something totally different?
No, well, it is different in the way that I have access to bigger cities. So that part of it is different, but the setup of the neighborhood is kind of similar. Well, not totally, but just kind of the level of activity, I guess.
Okay.
It's nice and similar.
What year were you born?
1993
Where were you born?
in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Why did you move to the Bay?
Honestly, it was kind of a last minute decision. So me and two of my friends, once I graduated from college, decided to do a big road trip around the country with the end goal of moving somewhere new. And so we had various places in mind that we might want to live, but it was kind of just left open, like wherever we really liked we would move. We'd all like saved a bunch of money, so we were pretty comfortable and willing to like spend a long time looking. And being around this area had kind of been in the back of my mind the whole time, but when I was about to be here, two of my friends from high school had already been living here for like a year and a half or so, and then one of my other friends from high school was in the process of driving here to move here. So they kind of had this idea that we would all live together here, and it just kind of seemed to work out really smoothly and nicely. So we just decided to get an apartment here, and within like 24 hours of being here, I'd signed a lease and was like, guess I'm living here now. Yeah, but I'm very glad that it worked out like that. It was very easy considering like how open-ended I had kind of left moving somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're really close to your friends in high school. I mean, all the Massachusetts girls moved to
Yeah.
Bay Area at the same time.
It's funny, the people that I grew up with kind of have this like tendency to stick together, even though a lot of us went to different colleges or didn't go to college and just moved somewhere else. Like a lot of the people that I know from home have just kind of like flocked together in different parts of the country, and here is a huge place. Like the three girls that I initially was living with, and actually still am, I wasn't super close with in high school. We were just kind of like acquaintance friends and knew each other, so comfortable enough to like happily get a place together, but we weren't like really close friends. So then we just sort of became close. So those people that you'd like know that you'll get along with really well if you spend all your time together, but you haven't yet. So yeah, it worked out very well.
It's a nice dynamic.
Yeah, it's very good.
So you live with 3 of them?
So I originally lived with 3 girls I grew up with and 1 that I went to college with, who I drove across the country with.
Mm-hmm.
And now I live with two girls I went to high school with and 2 girls I went to college with. So it's kind of changed as more people have moved out here that I know. So it's kind of, we're all accumulating here in the same apartment, which is great.
How many bedrooms is your apartment?
4.
Oh, it's a big apartment.
Wait. No, 2 that I went to college with and 1 that, no. 2 I went to high school with, 1 I went to college with. Yeah. So now there are 4 of us living there. But at one point in time there were 5 of us. I'm in the living room.
That's a lot of ladies under one roof.
Yeah, definitely.
Where did you go to college?
I first went to Wheaton College in Massachusetts, which is like a very, very small liberal arts school outside of Boston. And then 2 years in, I transferred to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, which is like 20 minutes away from my hometown.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
It's easy for holidays and stuff like that.
Yeah, very convenient.
What did you study?
Psychology and Spanish.
What did you want to do with that?
I've always wanted to be a therapist. So, kind of hoping that psychology goes in that direction at some point. But that's kind of like an in the future thing at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is Amherst like?
A lot. It's kind of like a smaller version of Northampton, which is where I grew up, and a lot of people compare it to Berkeley. It's very like local shops, a lot of families, but a lot of young college kids too, because in the area that I grew up in, there are 5 colleges, so there's like a lot of college students, but there are also like major high schools, so there's just a very wide range of people and ages, and it's not super diverse. It's a lot of white people. It's very liberal. It's very pretty. There are a lot of like big open fields. There's a lot of land. A lot of very small mountains that are very pretty. So, yeah.
What would you say are the differences between Amherst and Berkeley?
A lot. There are significantly more amount of people here. It's much more diverse. There are much more different cultures here. The homeless population is significantly larger than in Amherst. There's a lot more like sort of events and activities for more people. Not a lot more. There's a fair amount that goes on in Amherst, but I think it's just kind of proportionate to the amount of people that are here versus there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do. I have 2 half brothers, so we have the same dad, different moms, but I pretty much just consider them my full brothers. We grew up together. They're a lot older than I am. They're like 38 and 41, so they were like late teens when I was born, but we're really close, so I'm still like considering them my full brothers. Because a lot of people sort of make that distinction. They're like, we're only half siblings or we're step siblings, and it kind of creates this like distance between them. But I don't really have that with them, which is good.
That's nice. Are you close to them?
Yeah. I don't really see them that often because I live here and they both live in on the East Coast, but I talk to them a lot, and one of them has a daughter, my niece, who's like 9, I think, who I talk to a lot. So yeah, I don't see them so often, but I still sort of make the effort to keep in close contact because I think it's important.
That's good. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
It takes effort.
It is.
What is your earliest childhood memory?
Oh boy.
Or just a childhood memory?
A childhood memory.
It's hard to pinpoint the earliest.
I have a lot of memory. I lived on a hill growing up, and so me and my parents would take walks up the hill a lot, and I have a lot of memories of that. When I was younger, our like TV in our living room had a cable box on top of it, and when I was really young, I was reaching up to try and change the channel on the TV, and I accidentally pulled the cable box down. The whole TV came crashing down on me, and I remember this actually happening, and then we lived right down the street from the hospital, so my parents were horrified and threw me in the car, and I had these 2 massive black eyes and a concussion.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was horrifying, but I have pretty vivid memories of that, and one of my brothers was living in the house with us at the time, and he was in the basement where his bedroom was, and he had no idea this was going. He just heard a huge crash, and my parents rushed me out to the hospital, so he had no idea what was going on. He was horrified, and it was late evening too. But that's oddly one of my earliest memories, which I don't really think about as traumatizing or sad. I just think it's kind of weird and funny, because I wasn't seriously injured by it. It was just kind of why did I do that?
How did that happen?
How did that happen? Yeah, and after that, my parents were no more touching the TV. Okay, valid.
What kind of TV shows did you like as a kid?
I watched a lot of Arthur. Loved Arthur. I watched Power Rangers. Loved Power Rangers. Avatar, The Last Airbender. Loved that one. Watched a lot of Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, that type.
You like Nick at Night?
Yeah. I don't really remember a lot of the shows from it. It's the type of thing where people bring up Nick at Night and bring up certain shows, and I'm oh yeah, I remember watching that, but I don't know that I could necessarily come up with the names or sort of plots of the TV shows on my own. So.
Do you have any children?
I don't.
Are you in a relationship at all?
I'm not in a relationship.
What of the jobs that you've had is your favorite job?
I worked at a yarn store for about 3 years when I was in college, and I really loved my job at the yarn store. I was a stalker, so I mostly worked in the back and just kind of listened to podcasts and stocked the yarn and made these Excel worksheets so other people could easily figure out what they needed in different sections, and everyone I worked with was significantly older than me and very, very kind and kind of treated me like a daughter, younger sister type, so it was a great job. And I also worked as a receptionist at a hair salon for a few months, and I weirdly loved that job.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why. It was kind of, I just needed extra money, and over the summer, I took that on in addition to the yarn store. But I really like customer service interaction jobs like that, where I'm kind of interacting with people daily, and like, but whenever anything goes wrong, like, I'm not really the person to have to deal with it.
Right.
So I kind of get to be under this like protective shield of like, it's never really my fault unless I do something like horribly wrong. But like being a receptionist in that environment was like not terribly difficult. So it was just kind of fun. Everyone, like, people going to get a haircut are mostly like in a really good mood. They're about to like get styled or get like their hair blow dried by someone, so it's like they're not really in any type of like bad position. They're mostly happy coming in, so I kind of got the like happy people excited to get their hair cut every day, which I liked.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you know how to knit?
I do. I got into knitting for like a few months one winter when I was in college. I knit a couple of my friends' hats and I knit myself a scarf. But I don't knit a lot, and I haven't in a long time. But it's something that I really would like to get back into because I like knitting. I think it's like a very like calming kind of nice hobby to have.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I just haven't really put in the effort to like do it again since that one winter. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going home for Christmas this year, so I'm gonna go back to the yarn store and get some yarn and needles and sort of start a new project, hopefully.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fun. What kind of podcasts do you listen to?
I listen to Story Corps a lot. I like the
Could you tell me about that?
the podcast,
Yeah.
or just, it's like different people sharing different stories about their lives. Sometimes there's like a theme to them, and sometimes it's just kind of like different people telling different things about their lives. I haven't really listened to it, honestly, since I was working at the yarn store. But I listen to the Moth a lot too, which is like people, like, it's kind of just the same thing. It's a lot of people just like
I
sharing
feel like
their
listening
stories.
to podcasts that are mainly people sharing stories.
Yeah, yeah, I like that a lot. And my podcast kind of taste has shifted since then. I listened to this one podcast called Who Weekly, and it's these two people who talk about like B-list celebrities, just kind of people who like are not known but kind of pop up in different like internet scenarios, which is just like, it's kind of an odd podcast, but I think it's really funny. And they talk about just like different weird things that like famous people do and how like they relate to each other, and I really enjoy that. I'm trying to think what else I listen to now. I listen to this one called the Bodega Boys.
Mm-hmm.
They are these two guys, Jesus and Miro, and they have a show on Viceland now. But they've been doing this podcast for like a couple of years now, I guess. And they just, I don't even know what they talk about. It's just like they're very, very funny and like very intelligent and just like kind of bounce around from topic to topic, and they like have really funny things to say about everything. Their late night show is kind of more like dealing with like politics and different cultural things, but their podcast is much more candid and it's much more, they kind of just say whatever they want, and it's just kind of like a stream of consciousness of both of them, and they like
less structure, kind of more improv.
Exactly, and they bounce off of each other really nicely. So I just kind of like listening to people talk. I don't know, I think it's interesting, and you can kind of be an outsider and not have to be in the same, not have to be, but like just kind of listening to people and observing, even if you don't necessarily agree with everything. I think it's an interesting thing that podcasts kind of provide. But yeah.
What would you say is your favorite town or city in New England?
I would probably say Northampton, the town that I grew up in. I mean, I'm sure I'm just saying that because it's my home and like where I grew up and everything, but
Not everyone likes where they grew up.
that's true. That's true. It's just like very obviously sentimental. I have a lot of places where I like have a lot of memories growing up. It's really pretty. Like there are just all of these different landscapes that I haven't really seen in any other part of the country. Huge grassy fields and mountains and trees and everything like that. Lakes and ponds and everything. And you can kind of get all of that within like a half hour of each other, and maybe even like 10 minutes, honestly. I'm trying to think of other New England cities that I like Portland, Maine a lot. I have been there a few times recently, and Maine is just really beautiful. Like the lighthouses on the ocean, the beaches and everything. I like Maine a lot. I honestly haven't spent too much time in Vermont or New Hampshire. Vermont is really great too. I really like all New England states, but I would definitely say Northampton is my favorite city.
Have you been to Providence, Rhode Island?
Yeah, I've been to Providence a couple of times. One of my friends from college lived there, and I visited her a few times, but it didn't really stick out to me that much. I mean, I guess I didn't really spend that much time in the actual city. But it's nice. Yeah, I didn't really spend too much time enough to be able to get like a great impression of it. But I do like Newport, Rhode Island too. It's I like the waterside areas and that aspect of it.
So you obviously ended up in the Bay at the end of your long journey, so I assume that's your favorite. But what are some of your favorite places that you guys traveled through the country and like stopped at?
I love New Orleans. New Orleans is really great.
Really?
It's really beautiful. It's just like a very vibrant place. Like, the colors of the houses, the architecture, all the areas. I mean, like the French Quarter and Bourbon Street are definitely overwhelming and kind of insane. But I only spent like a very small amount of time there. There's this place called Frenchman Street, which has like every single night there's like live jazz music everywhere, and all these different restaurants and bars, and I really love New Orleans. I think it's like a really beautiful place. I'm trying to think. I kind of have like separated the different places we went in my mind to be like cities and national parks, because that's kind of the two different things that we really focused on. So as for cities, definitely New Orleans. I really like Austin, Texas. Have you ever been to Austin?
I haven't yet.
It's like this really big city that you can kind of find your way around, and then there's this place called Zilker Park, which has this like, I wouldn't call it a public pool. It's called Barton Springs, but it's like kind of set up like a public pool. It's like these natural springs that everyone can swim in. It's really pretty, and like Zilker Park has a lot of different activities for kids and like just kind of wide open spaces there. And when we were there, we went to this free outdoor music thing that they do, like I think it's called Blues on the Green, and they have like local artists come and play like once a week every summer, and it's really nice, and everyone gets there and sets up their chairs, and that's kind of also similar to things that happen in Northampton too, so I guess it kind of ties back to what I experienced growing up. But as I really loved Wyoming. Wyoming was like unbelievably beautiful. I went to Yellowstone National Park, which is massive. I had no idea how big it was, but it was like too overwhelming to even visit like multiple areas. We just kind of drove through. We took an entire day and drove through the whole park and would just kind of stop and get out different places and saw like the geysers and the different valleys. And then we went to Grand Tetons National Park, which is like so beautiful. It has these like really great snow-capped mountains and then like lakes at the bottom. And we swam in a couple of the lakes, just freezing, but it's just very scenic and calm. And Grand Tetons is less congested than Yellowstone because I think it's like the lesser national park in Wyoming, so people kind of just like zoom in on Yellowstone and forget about Grand Tetons, which I like because it means that there aren't as many people and it's like more enjoyable. And Glacier National Park in Montana was really a crazy place to see.
Crazy how?
It's just like the mountains are so big. We saw like some of the glaciers and there was this like turquoise water like lake in one area of it that was really wild to look at. So all of those areas like Montana, Wyoming are all really, really wonderful. And we spent a lot of time in southern Utah, which was really great. I had never, crazy, like growing up in New England, I never really considered Utah. I was kind of like, yeah, it's like the area where like Zion National Park is, but like Salt Lake City or whatever, but never really gave it a second thought. But we actually spent a lot of time driving on Highway 12, which is like kind of this windy red rock highway through Utah that's really nice. And we went to Lake Powell, which I had never heard of, but it's like this huge lake with like just surrounded by red rocks, and the lake itself is kind of like blue-green water. It's really clear, it's really clean, it's really like pleasant to be around and swim in, and we did a lot of camping around there, which was really great. So yeah, a lot of places. I think I prefer the like national park sort of nature-based parts of our trip. I love the cities that we went to too, but I feel like the national parks are kind of more what I enjoyed, I guess. But we tried to break it up kind of evenly and do like alternate a little bit, just to, because there would be times when we'd be in a city and we were like, I need to get out of a city right now. Like too many people, too many like, every time we stayed at a hostel, it would be like introducing yourself to 15 new people and having like kind of the same conversation. Oh, where are you from? Where are you guys going? What are you doing? It just got kind of exhausting. So then we'd go camp somewhere and just kind of be alone in the middle of nowhere for a little while. And it was kind of like a good balance between the two.
Yeah, that does seem nice.
Yeah.
What do you like to do in your spare time besides go to national parks?
Besides, I like to go hiking, which is sort of the same thing. And I like to read. I haven't really been reading a lot lately. But
What kind of books do you like to read?
I really like memoirs, which is something that I never really read very much of until like I graduated college basically, but then I kind of just started reading like all of these memoirs and I really liked it. I really like strong women memoirs. I think those are the most enjoyable to read for me, at least at this point in my life. But I haven't been reading so much. I kind of went through a phase where I read a lot of them, and then I just got very busy, so I kind of got pushed aside, but that's something that I'm definitely trying to start back up with.
What's one of your favorite memoirs that you read? Strong woman memoir.
Viv Albertine is the lead singer of this British, I think they're British, yeah, like all girls rock band called The Slits, and she wrote a book called Close Music Boys, I think is the name of it, or in some order of that, but it's just like about her growing up and her life and different experiences she had and sort of getting into music, and I really like that one.
Okay, we're gonna pause real quick because the camera shuts off at 30 minutes, so we have to restart it.
Okay.
So we're halfway through. So usually, let's see, where is that going off center? Let me just get that. Yeah, like that. Okay. So usually at 30 minutes, we do 3 minutes of just like still, no talking, no questions. Do you feel good? Do you want water or anything?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just move this a little bit. Does she look centered in there too? Yeah, that looks good, right?
He's really whiny. He's fine though.
Does it seem like slanted?
No,
Okay, cool.
I think it looks good.
Okay. So we'll do 3 minutes, and then when the 3 minutes are done, just like calmly tell her like, okay, thank you, and then back to the question. Okay. So whenever you guys are ready, you can press the button.
Okay, that concludes our 3 minutes. So Gwen, where are you working right now?
I am working for a family that lives in Hillsborough. I am also working at a horse farm. So I'm the assistant trainer of a horseback riding program, Castro Valley. And through that program I met this family that lives in Hillsborough, and they sort of needed someone to kind of just drive their kid around. So that's what I do. I pick her up from school every day and bring her to the barn for her riding lessons. And they are just sort of getting introduced to the whole world of horseback riding, but it's not really like any other sport. It's like very involved, and they have 2 horses now. So, like riding and showing and everything, I sort of guide them through that life. So, sort of like a driver and assistant and
They keep their horses there?
Yeah, so how it works is like people will buy horses and they come and ride them like anywhere between 3 and 5 times throughout the week, and the rest of the time the horses are like in training just to make sure that they are like staying sort of in shape and behaving properly. So I will bring the girl to her riding lessons, but when in the morning, and that's mostly in the afternoons, but in the mornings I go to the barn and kind of ride all of the horses and do something called, I've heard people call it corrective riding. So like a lot of the kids don't really know how to ride properly. That's what they're learning. So they will kind of like give the horses bad habits, or sort of not mess them up, but just like make mistakes that are like detrimental to the horse's training. So then me and one of the head trainers ride them and sort of fix all of the little issues. And it, like if they're behaving badly or like being stupid, then kind of just like deal with that. So and occasionally I'll fill in like teaching lessons. I ran a horse camp for like 3 weeks this summer that was entirely beginner riders who had never really even touched a horse, kind of like start to finish, of like how to be around a horse, how to put all the equipment on a horse, how to tell if a horse does not want you near it, or if it is happy with what you're teaching it, you know, like just kind of every single aspect of riding, and not even dealing with horses either, like just dealing with the equipment, or like scooping poop, or learning about the different breeds of horses, you know, all of those types of things.
Did you enjoy that?
I did. It was something that I wasn't necessarily looking forward to, because I don't know, I'm not around kids that much, so I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm going to be kind of awkward with them. And it was something that I didn't really realize that I had all of this like knowledge and information about this until I was suddenly like standing in front of 8 kids teaching them all these things. And I was like, oh, I actually do know a lot about this. And it's something that I kind of just like came naturally back when I was teaching, that I really enjoyed. And it takes a lot of patience, and it's kind of terrifying because kids will just like run around and like grab things and run up behind horses. And thankfully all of the horses that we use for the younger kids in the camps are like incredibly patient and calm, but so they can kind of tolerate all of these horrific things that kids do to them. But it's definitely scary when you like put a 6-year-old on a horse's back and there are 3 others that you have to be paying attention to. And some of the horses don't like each other, and you have to teach them in like a very small space so that they can't like wander off and get hurt. but the horses can't be too close to each other, so you kind of have to just like have eyes in the back of your head
You're
and
juggling
be
like a lot of.
yeah, exactly. And the first day during their riding lesson, the first day of the first week of camp, I was like shutting the gate to the arena and I was walking in and I got stung by a wasp on my hand and it hurts so bad and my whole entire arm swelled up immediately and it was like burning, but I was like, I can't really just like deal with this right now. I have to just kind of put this on the back burner. So I just kind of like sat there with my hand like this and just carried on. And then afterwards I was like, I guess I should take some bed. And I still actually have a little like scar, I guess, from where the wasp stung me. It was very weird, but it was just like first day, first week of camp, like already something goes wrong. But it ended up being totally fine, and I'm obviously not dead from the wasp, so
Goodness.
yeah, it was crazy.
How long have you been riding horses?
16 years. So since I was 8 years old, there were like 2 years when I was in college that I wasn't really riding very much. And when I was in high school, I like had a major injury and didn't ride for, I think, 2 years. So there have been like gaps in that 16 years, but since I was 8 years old, basically.
What kind of injury?
Well, I fell off of a horse once and broke my elbow, and then it wasn't really related, but this kind of like sparked this whole like lung issue that I had. So when I was 15, I think I was 15, so my sophomore year of high school, my lung collapsed, and so after that I had to have 3 lung surgeries until like I was 17, basically. So for like several years I was kind of like in and out of lung surgeries, in and out of the hospital. Not all the time, but it was just like something in my life that I was like really had to just deal with then, because it's very weird. Like, it's called a spontaneous pneumothorax. So people who are tall and thin, mostly guys this happens to, are born with little pockets of air on their lungs, and just at any given time, for no reason, they'll just burst and let air out of your lung. So the first time it happened, I think it was my left lung was like 80% collapsed, and I had to have a chest tube in, and I had to like leave it in for like 24 hours and like drain stuff and let it reinflate, and then after that it was kind of like, you can either just kind of like wait for this to happen again, or you can get a surgery to secure your lung to your chest wall to make sure it never happens again. So my parents are kind of just like, you're gonna get the surgery, so this isn't like a problem for the rest of your life. Yeah. So that was in the fall of my sophomore year of high school. So the following summer I had surgery, but before that in the spring, my right lung collapsed. So I had to get a chest tube in there and then get the surgery on my left lung, and then the summer after that I had to get surgery on my right lung. So it was kind of an ongoing issue for a long time. But up until once my right lung collapsed, they were kind of like, you need to get this sooner rather than later, because there is a chance that both lungs will collapse at the same time and you'll die. So this is kind of like a pressing thing.
Yeah.
So for a couple of months I was like hoping that wouldn't happen, but it was also the kind of thing where my surgeon was like, nothing that you do can prevent this, so don't like live your life any differently, because no amount of exercise will make this happen or make it not happen, or any type of like activity that you would do. So yeah, that prevented me from riding and doing other things for a couple of
For a
years.
little bit.
But it wasn't as if my life was that different because of it. I just couldn't really ride horses. So yeah.
It hasn't happened since though?
No, I sometimes will have. It's actually funny. So I sometimes will get a similar pain up where I used to have the pain from the lung collapses. But while that happens, I'm kind of like, I know that it's not possible for my lung to collapse, and I know that this pain isn't that significant, but it's still kind of odd.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe like a year ago, I was talking to someone and I was describing the pain to them, and I was like, I don't really know what this is. It might be just scar tissue or something. And they're like, you're describing heartburn also? I was like, oh my god, I think that this pain that I've been feeling that I thought was my lung is actually just me getting heartburn. And I was talking to one of my friends, actually went through the exact same thing. He never got the surgery, but he had a series of lung collapses. And I called him immediately and I was like, do you get heartburn that you think is your lung? He was like, yes, exactly that. I've had that so many times, and I thought it was my lungs at first too, but turns out it's just heartburn. So I haven't had any other instances of that other than heartburn. So
Well, that's good.
yeah, sometimes it's a little bit sore, but it's never like if I get winded and it's
Mm-hmm.
the air is really cold, then it's kind of like achy, but it's never something that really concerns me, which is relieving. But yeah.
With the horses, do you feel like you are bonded to any of them?
Yeah, definitely. Like the more time you spend with them and like the more you ride and the more you work on different things, you definitely connect to them very quickly. And when I first started riding with these two women that run the program I work for, I kind of went into it with this mindset of being like, I just want to ride like once a week or something just for fun. I don't really want to do anything competitive or serious or anything. And then it kind of, they were kind of like, no, you have a lot of experience and you're like pretty like educated in this. So like they kind of like pushed me further into it. And I started working with the horse that is owned by one of the women that runs the program. And she was like 5 years old at the time, so she was really young, and she had a lot of training, but she wasn't so far along in her training, so I kind of just ended up working with her a lot and kind of bringing her along. And so we definitely bonded a lot. Like she it's funny, a lot of people like talk about mares versus geldings, and mares are kind of like bitchy in a way. Like they're just kind of like rude and have this like quirk about them that you can't really like tell them what to do. You kind of have to work with them to get them to do stuff, which is different than geldings, like male horses who you can kind of just bully into doing things, which I think is kind of funny about horses in general. But the horse that I worked with is like just like has a very large personality, and she is like very talented, and she's very like exciting and great, and so we worked together for a long time. She got injured like earlier this year, kind of, and no one's been able to figure out what her injury is, so she's kind of been on rest for this whole year. But before that, I rode her like 3 or 4 times a week. We went to a show together, and I brought her to her first like competition. It was really great. So she was kind of the first horse that I really like bonded with in a long time. So that kind of like pushed me back into this whole industry full force.
You don't have your own horse though?
No. I would love to, but it's just like so incredibly expensive to do that. I couldn't really.
Just like stabling fees, feeding.
Like, purchasing a horse is like only the first little bit of it. Like, it's not even that's the real extreme. It's like vet, farrier, which their feet, dental, hay, grain, stall, equipment. A lot of the horses that we have in our barn get like acupuncture and get like seen by the chiropractor.
Really?
Yeah, because they're like athletes. So a lot of the kids, especially if you like make a mistake or like they do something bad or stupid, like yeah. So the horses get kind of like bent out of shape, so they have to be adjusted a lot. It's just kind of like one thing after another with them, which makes sense because it's an animal and
right.
You can't really like predict how things will go. Like the horse that I had been working with for a while, we think that she just like slipped and fell when she was outside one day. So like things like that happen so easily. And if I were to get a horse, I'd want to compete on the horse, and that is also like an incredible expense. Like each show is probably $2,000
just to enter.
It's no, with like all of the fees and everything. Like each competition you do is called a class. So like there are class fees, there are fees for like trailering your horse to the show, having the horse be at the show, the food there, just kind of everything you can think of. People will stick a fee onto.
Yeah,
so
wow.
yeah, so it's very expensive. So what I do right now is like show other people's horses for them to sort of build the horse's experience and resume, that they call it. So I'm just kind of like bonded to other people's horses doing that, which I really like. I really like all of the,
nice.
Yeah, it's very enjoyable, and I get a lot of experience doing it. So hopefully one day I'll have my own horse, but in the meantime, I'm really enjoying just riding other people's horses.
Do you feel like you're more bonded to people's horses than the horses are to their people?
I don't think so. I think it's just kind of in a different way. Like, I think that the horse will have, I wouldn't say like more or less. I would just say like differently, because I'm kind of like the trainer figure to the horse, and then the kids are sort of like the horse needs to take care of the kids, like kind of teaching I don't know how to describe it, but I think it's just in a lot of different ways.
Does the horse know its owner, like loyalty like a dog to an owner?
Sometimes.
Sort of recognition.
Kinda, yeah. Like, a lot of horses can kind of tell who is on their back. Like, a lot of horses can tell who is riding them. Like, there are some horses that, like, you put a 7-year-old beginner on, and they just kind of, like, lumber around all, like, calm and sweet because they know that the person on their back has no idea what they're doing. Whereas, like, if I get on the same horse and kind of, I mean, I guess I just, like, naturally start doing things that they kind of know that I know what I'm doing and I'm going to ask a lot more of them. So it's kind of like an instant reaction. The horse can tell, like, oh, the person who's riding me right now is, like, very experienced and educated. It's going to ask me to, like, perform more in a different way. So in that way, I think that the horses kind of recognize, like, the level of experience of the rider on them, and if they're making like specific mistakes, it's tied to like not less experience basically. Whereas like the mistakes that I make are like not any better or worse, they're just like different because I'm more educated in it. I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to describe.
Do the people who come and take classes, so you don't have to own a horse to come and take classes, do they get time to spend with the horse, or is it just like saddle up and go?
Yeah, so we recommend that you come like 30 to 40 minutes before your lesson. So you can, well, it's basically just the process of like getting all of the equipment on the horse and grooming the horse, but that is all very like close time that the kids have with the horse. So like the people who come get to spend like a solid 30 to 40 minutes like brushing, picking out the horse's feet, and sometimes like if we're feeding during the time that lessons are going on, then like the kids will help feed the horses. So it's kind of like,
That's nice.
yeah, you get like different bits and pieces of the experience that isn't just like sitting on the horse's back learning how to get it to go where you want it to go. Like there's a lot more to it than that. And then after you ride, you have to like fully walk out the horse to make sure it's not like exhausted or still like active and moving. It's called cooling down the horse, and you have to like completely untack and then like clean your tack and clean the horse, which is like the saddle and the bridle, the equipment that you use. So it's like a whole process before and after, which makes it very like convenient and easy for people to spend time with the horses because it's kind of built into the whole program. And there are also like groundwork lessons. So one of the trainers that I work for has like this whole background in like what's it called, like natural horsemanship and like groundwork training. So it's a lot of like kind of establishing like a relationship with the horse that you're working with, and sort of this like idea that there should be like a respectful partnership between the two of you, where like you're in charge but you're also like working with the horse with what they want to be doing. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's just kind of establishing this like I'm in charge but like you can trust me from the person to the horse, which makes it a lot easier for the horse to do what you're asking when you're riding, because you've already established that you are trustworthy and the horse can have confidence in you and itself, and it ties a lot into the riding part of it. So a lot of the lessons are just groundwork lessons that people come and do, which is a really nice thing that the program I work with offers, that most people don't really offer that.
Yeah, that sounds really unique.
Yeah, it's really great.
What is something that you would like to see before you die?
I don't know. Like racking my brain. Like a specific place or like just anything?
Maybe even just something you would want to do or experience.
I'd really like to do some sort of like backpacking trip, like not super long term, but just kind of like by myself.
Where?
Somewhere. I don't know. That's like, I know that there are several trails that a lot of people do within this country, but I think it would be really interesting to go somewhere else and do something like that. Like a different continent. I don't know, maybe like Spain or New Zealand or something. But I haven't really thought too much about that. It's kind of just the first thing that popped into my mind.
Okay, that works. What is something that you feel most proud of? I think the fact that I kind of
just picked up and moved out here without any type of plan and just sort of like established a life here and like worked hard to kind of maintain my life here. And have like traveled significantly since I've been here. I'm pretty proud of that. I think that that's like,
That's really scary for most people.
yeah, and like I've talked to various people about like moving across the country and like moving somewhere new, and I think something that I really realized on my road trip is that like within reason you can kind of just do whatever as long as you like really put in the effort and like are realistic and work for it, which I guess I didn't really realize before. So moving here, I guess, was kind of a big independent step for me. Yeah.
Alright, so the last question is, what would you like to tell future Americans?
I think that there's kind of this mindset that people have, or at least that I had when I was growing up, where like it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of like impact that you can have. Like, I don't know, whenever I would think about doing something, I was kind of like, well, I could never do that, or like that wouldn't really do anything or mean anything. But I think I would say like don't have that mindset. Like if you like want to do something or like experience something or like change something, then it's always worth putting in the effort to do that, whether it works or not. Just like even making the attempt and kind of seeing it through, whether it's on like a small scale or a large scale, is very important and worth it. So yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.